So, I am Francisca Goldsmith, and I'm here today on behalf of Publisher Spotlight to interview author Joe Carriker upon the publication of his novel, Sacred Band. So, hi, Joe. It's good to have you here today.
Hi, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Sure. So, first, congratulations are in order on a whole variety of fronts. There's the publication of your first novel, Sacred Band, which was released by Green Ronin Publishing just last month. And, you know, last month was last week, so.
It really was, yeah.
And second, its earlier publication by Leith Press got you a Kirkus Review Star, and those things are not easy to get. So are there any substantive changes, maybe between that 2017 edition and this brand new one?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna take a second to brag for a minute because I recognize how singular it is, but I also got a starred review from Publishers Weekly for that
Excellent.
one as well. Yeah, so when Sacred Band was my first novel, and I was very much a baby author at that time, despite having, been writing professionally in games for almost 20 years at that point. The last chapter has been rewritten. It was sort of rushed. I was very much in the how do I finish this kind of a frame of mind. It was good. I enjoyed it. I was happy with it, but not as happy as I could have been, if that makes sense.
Oh, sure.
And so the good folks at Nisaba Press and Green Ronin were very kind enough to let me do a pretty solid rewrite on that chapter, and then actually write an epilogue chapter on top of that. So there's an entire chapter full of entirely new content. That is mostly a lot of wrap up because it's sort of previously it was sort of height of action, we hit a climax and scene, and that was it. I feel like there's a difference. There's a difference in terms of my craft since then, and so I'm really happy to be able to.
Great.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if life could give us that kind of do-over too?
Ooh, let me tell you. You know what? I'm gonna just send this whole week to the editor. It needs some work.
That's good. Okay, so Sacred Band dives both into superhero culture and queer culture, and you've been writing for years, including games with Green Ronin Publishing, like the romantic RPG Blue Rose, Age, and books for Critical Role Tal'Dorei.
Yep.
In that setting. And you've been an outspoken queer gamer for years. So what changes have you noticed in the gaming world's attitudes towards its queer members across the years? We will not compare.
No need to. I mean, the reality is for a very long time, there was kind of a really strong division in gaming. Before I was even involved professionally, it always felt like, there were folks who embraced gaming as kind of avant-garde, somewhat innovative, very creative, and there was always room for queer folks in those spaces if they weren't being established by queer folks themselves. And then sort of on the other hand, it always felt like there was this sort of old guard of kind of, straight white cisgender dudes who weren't interested in all of that nonsense, and were very sort of, dismissive or contemptuous, if not worse sometimes. And so it was sort of difficult on some level being queer, because you never knew what you were going to find yourself in the middle of when you showed up. These days, I really, really love the accessibility of creating games, because these days there are so many queer game creators that it is it's wonderful to be able to find this sort of content out there, and lots of queer folk have sort of discovered gaming within the past decade or so, and it's gotten much bigger. I am involved with a there's a yearly panel that we do at Gen Con called Queers, the Three-Sided Die. And originally, the purpose of that panel was just to sort of talk about what it was like being queer in the gaming industry and creating queer games and that sort of thing. And just over the years, it's just gotten so huge and so well attended, almost to the point where, like, there's so many other panels with queer content and queer creators and,
Yeah,
going on at the same
yeah,
time. It's wonderful to see. It's really, really
yeah.
wonderful to see.
It's wonderful having community, and when your
It
communities can
is.
be multiple communities that are dynamic, that's the best.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is.
So tell me a little bit about the differences you discovered. I mean, different people discover different
Of
things.
course.
When you're writing a novel from when you're authoring games and RPG books, and what did you discover in gaming that you decided was better explored than writing a novel?
So there's a joke among my other writer friends, and that joke is that I write novels like a game designer,
Mhm.
which is to say I'll get about 80,000 words in and realize it's all world building so far, and I actually need some characters and a plot. Um, I would say that the big difference is with gaming, even when you're writing adventures, right, which have plots and characters and all the rest of them, even then, the material that you're writing is not telling a story. It is providing tools for other people to tell stories. And that's, for me, is kind of the core difference. Which is why, and I found the two sets of skills, like, there are things that I learned as a game writer that have served me really well. Like, in running games, you do a lot of sort of mental visualization of what these high action scenes look like. And when you're writing for superheroes or fantasy heroes or whatever, being able to really solidly not just visualize these things in sort of frames, but, like, determine what the movement within that scene looks like so that it all feels very natural,
Mhm.
has been an incredible boon. I mean, a lot of people in reviews for Sacred Band have noted that, like, the action scenes are they found them really compelling and they moved fast and that sort of thing, which is good. But yeah, they're very different disciplines, and I'm still kind of, I guess I'm not quite a baby author anymore, but I like, sophomore at best, right?
I think most of us remain sophomores most of our lives. So, what aspect of Sacred Band do you think it's absolutely essential for would-be readers who haven't read it yet to know about why you wrote it?
Why I wrote it. So a number of years ago, first of all, Sacred Band was born entirely due to social media. A number of years ago, the X-Men brand of comics were releasing a new comic that was made up of entirely of women. The team was all women, and this sort of created some conversation on social media. And someone at one point said, "Well, I can understand why women would want, like, an all-woman team." He's like, "But I can't see that for other people. Like, I can't see a team made up of, like, only all gay people." And I was like, first of all, you don't know any gay people, like, because, not to put too fine a point on it, there are a lot of people in the community who, if they never had to deal with another straight person again, they would. The fact is, we build community very naturally and very intrinsically. And I kind of wanted to show what that would look like through kind of the lens of superheroes. Like, why would a bunch of queer superheroes get together? And for me, it's kind of an outgrowth of, in my early 20s, I worked I worked as a bouncer in a gay bar. And one of my jobs, like, at the end of the night, was to take a big old baseball bat and to walk patrons who were going back to their cars by themselves, to walk them there, to make sure that nothing untoward or violent happened, because it did happen
Yeah.
sometimes. And for me, Sacred Band is about telling that story with superpowers. The fact that there are some times when, in marginalized communities, we can't depend on the power structures that exist that are supposed to protect people, because a lot of times those power structures are the ones that are marginalizing us, right? They're the ones that sometimes we have to be protected from. And so communities, marginalized communities, will band together and create organizations and movements within themselves intended to protect people in that community. And so Sacred Band is basically a story about a world that has no use for costumed superheroes anymore. You know, if you want to defend your country, you join superpowered military units. If you want to fight crime, you join law enforcement. But this is a story about some queer superheroes who are seeing something happen in places, to marginalized people, mostly queer, but not just. And the power structures that are supposed to be there to protect them aren't, and nobody's doing anything about it. And they have the power to do something about it. And so even though doing so potentially breaks the law, they decide to do something about it anyway. And it's very much the story of how, in situations like this, you not only find allies, but you often find family. And yeah.
That's great. Thank you. You've got a second novel out too.
I do.
So more congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anything about Shadow Tide, which is published by Nasaba, that will hook readers who've just read Sacred Band?
Well, pretty much all the fiction I write is very queer. So if you like the queer content in Sacred Band, you'll find something similar in Shadow Tide. Shadow Tide takes place in the Blue Rose universe, which is a romantic fantasy setting. And the story in Shadow Tide kind of focuses on a team of folks who are basically like spies and border patrol and this sort of thing, called the Sovereign's Finest. And it involves some of their compatriots going missing, and them needing to find them. And so they sort of along the way create this sort of, again, dysfunctional found family sort of dynamic that sometimes is a little more sharper, but a little more fun for that too. So honestly, those elements are in both of my novels so far, and probably will be in most of my other. They say write what you know, right?
That's used to have. Any advice to offer specifically gamers who are considering trying their own hand as writers, either of games or fiction or anything for that matter?
Yeah. If you're a gamer, you probably I know a lot of folks who play role-playing games who would like to write, and a lot of times they're inspired by the games that they've played. Right? The games that we play are so beautifully collaborative sometimes, right? Like everybody is working together, and it's a weird dynamic that you don't see in our culture a lot, right? Because it is a group collaboration in which we are both creating and consuming art at the same time, building off of one another's works. Aside from some of the sort of streamed games that occur these days, it's just for your group. And so a lot of gamers I know who want to write want to share those stories with other people, and I 100% encourage that. But you have to realize those two crafts are different from one another, and you have to be willing to sort of put in the grunt apprenticeship work, right? The sort of foundation of any craft is just doing this thing that you're not good at when you start, until you become better at it. And that's going to be necessary. You're going to gain a lot of inspiration from your game writing and game playing, but not a lot of practical applicability will be there. You're kind of going to have to start from the ground floor and just be sort of okay with that.
Great advice. Do you have any virtual appearances coming up at any cons that are happening online these days?
I will. I'm trying to think. I will probably be at OrcaCon. OrcaCon's virtual convention this January, I believe. And then honestly, other than that, I haven't set up any further appearances. Although usually when January rolls around is when all of that starts to, all of those obligations start popping up with some question marks. So,
And I think probably this January in particular, because that's the point when a lot of cons will make that big decision to
we'll
another year.
have to look very seriously at things. Yeah, it's true.
Thanks, Joe. This has been great talking to you.
Likewise.
Best wishes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So thanks for taking your time to talk with us.
Absolutely.
And good luck.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.